Hey, good to have you here. This is Web Apps Programming. We're jumping into a little bit of React today, looking at the basics, what we've covered so far in the class. Boom, quick review on what React is, functionally within Code Sandbox, and then jumping into how to build out components, what the heck are components, how do they work, and then how do we build and use a switch router using a couple components. So we're gonna get into some stuff, gonna be fun. Please join along. You can get a lot of value coding along, and feel free to stop or rewind at any point. And if you're not in the class, hey, good to have you here. Hope you gain some knowledge if you want. This isn't a deep dive into React. This is really a quick synopsis or summary of what we've done so far and what's going on. So it's going to be a little bit quick. If you want a little bit more thorough of a deep dive, you can jump into some of the earlier lessons. So let's get into it. Boom. From React 007, if you're following along with this video, boom, you can get into that sandbox, which is a template I'll bring up in Code Sandbox. I'm going to fork that, and we're going to kind of walk through what's going on with the file structure, what the heck is React. Remember, React is a library that is built on top of or for JavaScript. And without getting too deep into what that means, it's basically some fancy logic language that returns HTML like we've been using classically with the H1s and Ps and whatnot. And so it's able to return that kind of stuff, like you can kind of see right here if you're familiar with HTML. And it does so wrapped inside this other logic, and this is a special JavaScript library that is React. You can see it imported right at the top there, along with our style sheet, which needs to be imported. So just kind of quickly looking at like, how the heck does this work? How does it get on the page? Boom. In index HTML, you don't need to read all this, blah, 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 but it's the basic classic way. Boom, you got your header and you got your body, right? Bodies usually return, that's what we've been writing our HTML in. Well, the only real thing going on in the body here is this ID, this div that doesn't have anything in it but has an ID of root. Boom, that's what React grabs onto. In our index.js, without getting into the depths of all the stuff going on here, check it out. It says, hey, get that root ID, which we saw in our HTML a second ago. It says, hey, where that root is, put in app, basically, and that's your application. That's your app. So inside of our app, we've got our HTML. It's being returned as this thing called a function, and this is specifically an arrow function, but this is something called app. So within this, we learned that we can write HTML code, and it appears on, of course, the screen there in our application. Hi, you know what I mean? And so this is returning HTML, which your browser can read and returns. It has this other functionality, which we'll get into, but it also classically styles using not class like HTML, but actually class name. Class is a reserved word within React, so they just had to add class name on top of that, name on top of that, so that they can, so that you can style it. Boom. So one quirky little weird thing is that you can't have anything within a return, right? Within this thing that's a component, specifically a functional component. It's this arrow function. It can only return one thing. It's very React allows you to do a lot of loose stuff, but one thing it's very particular about, you can only return one thing. Now, that one thing can return a whole bunch of things, like H1s and Ps things, you know what I mean? And so you can put a whole bunch of stuff inside of that one thing, inside of that one div, which now contains those 3 objects. But we couldn't, for example, try to put a paragraph outside of that. This thinking about it as like trying to return 1, that div, and then 2, that paragraph, 2 things, and we'll get an error. So it's a little particular about that. Whatever, we wrap it all in the div. Fantastic. Now, this is kind of the basics of like the file structure, what's going on inside of our files in React. We have our styles right here. Booyah, that's connected to our app right now. We're going to build out different types of style sheets with different components. We also got, oh, I threw in an example component. If you're ever trying to make a component, you're like, how the heck is it supposed to work again? Oh yeah, it has that export default at the bottom. It looks like that. You feel free to like copy and paste. It's just an example if you don't like it. And our package JSON, which has all the important stuff that we're using or going to be using, all the dependencies and stuff that they call it. So like we're using React, so that gets imported. That's a special library. React DOM, which allows it to work its magic in the virtual DOM, like we've talked about before. And this template that I created for us also has our router DOM. That's a router. We're going to be using that to make different routes. So you can have like a home page and an about page and a menu page if you're making a store or something like that. So fantastico. So that's kind of some of the details that are going on in there. All right. These are the basics of React. Now, what we'd like to do, let's actually do that. Let's make a bit of a store page here. And thinking about that, in app, we could start to, for example, make this homepage for Gino's Pizza. And we can talk it's all about the crust, I would say. And then let's actually change that to H2 to be a bit more fitting. A little bit more fitting of styling over here. And this the greatest pie in the world. Something like this. All right, fine. We don't, and we want images and all that stuff. All right, great. So we've got a home page coming about here. This is not bad for sure. Like, we want more content, but thinking about our page as a bigger idea, we actually are gonna want multiple pages for our website, right? Like, not just the home page, but also like a menu page or some things to click on. And so this allows we can start thinking about this idea of components, which is fundamental to React. Instead of like writing all of our different pages within app right here and imagining that this code can get very, very long very quickly, rather it's a smart idea to build this out, and wouldn't it be great, instead of to have that stuff right there, we could just say, hey, put homepage here, something like this. We could put homepage there, and then all of a sudden we would have homepage, and we would be able to edit homepage in like a different file. That's exactly the idea of components. So it looks like this. It's a self-closing tag. It can also have an opener and closer, but we'll use just the self-closing tag right now. And in order to import this and use this, we're going to actually have to create that file. So within src, our source, we're going to create a new folder. We'll call this pages, and this will have like our different pages inside of it. And so inside of pages, let's create a new file. And this file is going to be that component, that homepage component. So we're going to call it homepage, the same name, .js or JSX, because this is technically, when we're using React, it's actually a JavaScript file, and this is JavaScript that we're writing, which is just special library that allows us to use and write HTML within our JavaScript. So we'll call it JS. You could also call it .jsx. Both work. And here we're going to want to do a few things. We're going to import React from React. So we have access to the React library. Nowadays you don't technically need that, but we'll use it even just to indicate that we are making an React app. And we're going to make a constant. We're going to create something called homepage, HOMEPAGE, and it's equal to what it is a special function, something that returns something. It doesn't take in any information. If we need information, we'll put it there in the future, and it does the following. We get to make that cool arrow. And then we need brackets. I know that's a lot of syntax, and so we can put functions and stuff here, but really what we're interested in is a return. What the heck is it going to return? And we'll give it in the parentheses. It's going to return the following. Remember, it can only return one thing, so we'll make a div within which everything else will live. I think I copied it already. Yeah, there we go. And so just pasting in that information from before. Hey, here we go. We got our homepage information all located inside of homepage. The one thing that we need to do here at the bottom is not just make the thing homepage. We also have to export it. So the other things, specifically app, has access to it. So we're like, hey, now that we made homepage, let's export it default, and then the name of it, HOMEPAGE, and look. All right, I think I did all that right. Let's save it. Boom. I think we're good there. Now we're still not seeing anything in our browser, and I know why that is. Looking back at app, okay, so we created homepage. Boom, excellent. This is called a component. We made a component called homepage. We exported it, and now we can just throw that thing in like this using homepage. Now the little trick is, in order to use it, we gotta import it. For each individual component, one of the main reasons it's like really quick and good and efficient, React, is that it's really just accessing the information that it needs, and it's able to work in these smaller little bundles, from what I understand. So we actually need to import it. And we would import it like this. Import homepage from, now quotes, now we have to find it within our application. So you start from where you're at. From app, we need to go into pages. So we say dot from where we're at, / go into pages, and / within pages, we want homepage. And you can do right homepage or homepage JS, either way works. And when we save it, with any luck, we'll see our homepage over here. Hey, and there we go. So what's going on here is we're like, hey, we want homepage, but we want to build that as a component. So like we write homepage like this as a self-closing capitalized guy, that's what we need to import from a new component that looks like this. It's a React component. It has that fancy syntax that you can just copy and paste if you're unsure about it, that specifically has the return of our HTML that we are interested in, or whatever we're interested in. Making sure that we export that at the bottom. Boom. So that is the full pipeline of creating a component, and we can create multiple ones of these. Fantastic. How are we doing? We're at 50 minutes. You know what? I'm going to build out the router as a separate video, so we'll do that separately. Thank you so much for joining. We went over the basics of how React works on top of an HTML page using JavaScript, and then got into specifically how to make components within and use components within a React app. Thanks for joining. Happy coding. We'll do routers in the next video.